The hum of the server room was Amelia Sharma's constant companion. Dr. Sharma, though everyone called her Mia, was a new face at the prestigious Institute of Advanced Sound Studies. Fresh out of her PhD, she'd landed what sounded like a dream job, analyzing historical audio recordings using cutting-edge technology. Most days, it involved painstakingly restoring crackly old speeches or lost classical performances. But today, her supervisor, Professor Jenkins, had dropped a new project on her desk. Sharma, Jenkins had boomed, his voice a gravelly counterpoint to Mia's soft enthusiasm. Cultural acoustic signatures. It's a bit different. We're looking for unique vocal traits in iconic figures. Think signature sounds. Mia blinked Elvis, the king of rock and roll. She'd grown up hearing his songs, of course, but she wasn't a superfan. She pictured sequin jumpsuits and swiveling hips, not complex sound wave analysis. Elvis Presley, sir? She repeated, trying to keep the surprise out of her voice. Wouldn't someone like, say, Maria Callas, or even a public speaker like Martin Luther King Jr., be more acoustically significant? Jenkins grunted. Callas is being handled by Dr. Chen King, by Dr. Lee. You get Elvis. There's a lot of material. Go deep. Find something unique. Either way, funding depends on interesting results. He gave her a look that clearly said, don't mess this up. Mia nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. Yes, Professor. Back at her workstation, Mia pulled up the first batch of Elvis recordings. Early stuff, Heartbreak Hotel, blue suede shoes, hound dog. The audio quality was surprisingly good, considering the age. She put on her high-fidelity headphones, adjusted the levels, and pressed play. The moment Elvis's voice filled her ears, Mia felt something shift. It wasn't just the raw power, the effortless transition from a growl to a soaring high note. It was something else, something she couldn't quite pinpoint. A warmth, a vibration that seemed to settle deep in her chest. She wasn't supposed to feel the music. She was supposed to analyze it. She was a scientist, not a concert-goer. She started with the basics: pitch, timbre, vocal range, all impressive, as expected. But as she ran the sound waves through her specialized software, isolating frequencies and mapping vocal harmonics, she started to see something unusual in the lower registers, particularly when Elvis hit those deep resonant notes. There was a subtle, almost imperceptible extra layer, tiny ripple in the sound wave that didn't quite fit the typical human vocal model. She zoomed in, enhanced the visualization. It was there again, a consistent low-frequency hum nested within his voice. It wasn't a microphone painting. It was too precise, too integrated into the vocal performance. It wasn't a vocal tremor or a flaw either. It was something else. It was like his voice had an echo inside itself, a hidden bass line, only visible to her advanced equipment. Mia paused the recording. She replayed a snippet of Heartbreak Hotel, focusing on the deep, mournful tones. The anomaly was undeniably present. She toggled between different spectral analyses, different algorithms. The ripple persisted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious to the casual listener, but her equipment screamed its presence. "What in the world are you?" Mia murmured to the glowing screen. She spent the rest of the day immersed in Elvis's early catalog. Don't be cruel. Love me tender. Each time he dipped into his lower range or held a long resonant note, that peculiar low-frequency signature appeared. It was almost like a faint, consistent vibration riding just beneath the surface of his main vocal tone. She compared it to recordings of other baritones and tenors of the era. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole. Their sound waves were clean, strong, impressive, but lacked that specific hidden ripple. Elvis's voice was, acoustically speaking, just a little bit denser, more complex. By the end of the day, Mia's head was buzzing, not just with the sound of Elvis, but with the excitement of an unexpected discovery. She felt a tingle of anticipation, the kind that only a true scientist felt when on the cusp of something new. This wasn't just about an iconic figure. This was about a unique physiological figure. What she had found was more than just a signature sound. It was a flicker, a whisper of something truly extraordinary hidden within the king's voice. And she knew with a certainty that hummed louder than any server that she had to find out what it was. Her research into Elvis Presley had just begun, and it was already far from ordinary. The next morning, Mia arrived at the lab before anyone else. The faint glow of her monitors greeted her. She hadn't been able to sleep much, her mind replaying snippets of Elvis's voice and the strange, persistent patterns she'd observed. The flicker, as she'd started calling it, was embedded in her thoughts. She poured herself a strong coffee and plunged back into the data. She meticulously cross-referenced her findings. Was it the recording equipment, the microphone models, the studio acoustics? She pulled up schematics of 1950s, RCA Victor Studios, researched microphones, specifications, even found old blueprints of the rooms Elvis had recorded in. She ran the same analyses on other artists who had recorded in the exact same studios with the exact same equipment. The flicker wasn't there. It was unique to Elvis. Mia spent hours isolating the specific frequency range where the flicker occurred. It was consistently in the low end, around 60 to 80 hHz, sometimes dipping lower, sometimes peaking just above. It wasn't a fundamental frequency of his voice, which was much higher, but an underlying resonant wave that seemed to accompany his primary vocal output. It was like his voice had a ghost, a shadow frequency that followed its every move. She tried to explain it to herself. Was it an infrasound? Frequencies below the range of human hearing? No. It was just within the lower limits of audibility, or rather felt more than heard by most people, but her equipment registered it clearly. It was a subtle harmonic, but one that didn't fit the standard models of vocal cord vibration. It was too stable, too consistent, too much like a fundamental tone in itself, yet it accompanied another. Finally, she drafted an initial report complete with spectrographs and data tables, highlighting the anomaly. She carefully worded her findings, trying to sound scientific and objective, but the excitement thrummed beneath every sentence. This was big. This was new. She scheduled a meeting with Professor Jenkins and Dr. Chen, a senior acoustician who often collaborated with Jenkins. Maya practiced her presentation, refining her explanations, anticipating questions. She wanted to be prepared. The meeting started promptly. Mia projected her findings onto the large screen. Professor Jenkins, Dr. Chen, she began, her voice steady despite the flutter in her stomach. I've been analyzing Elvis Presley's vocal recordings, specifically focusing on early works from 1954 to 1958. She clicked to the first spectrograph, showing a typical Elvis vocalization. As you can see, the vocal range and power are exceptional. However, my analysis has revealed a consistent low-frequency anomaly that appears alongside his primary vocal output. She zoomed in, highlighting the flicker. This isn't an effect of the recording equipment, nor does it appear in other artists recorded in the same studios, using similar sepets. She showed a comparative graph. Elvis's voice alongside another powerful male vocalist. The difference was clear to Mia, but Chen just squinted at the screen. Are you sure this isn't just background noise, Sharma? Chen asked, adjusting his glasses. Old recordings can be quite noisy, or perhaps an instrument bleed through. I've isolated the vocal track as much as possible, Dr. Chen, Mia explained patiently. And the pattern correlates directly with Elvis's vocalization. It appears precisely when he sings, and disappears when he pauses. It's too specific to be ambient noise or instrument bleed. Jenkins stroked his chin. Interesting. But what is it? A vocal fry, a specific resonance point in his sinuses. I've explored those possibilities, Mia replied. It doesn't fit the characteristics of vocal fry, and while resonance is certainly a factor, this particular frequency seems to be an addition to his voice. Rather than just an amplification of an existing harmonic, it's almost as if his body is producing two distinct, yet perfectly aligned, sound waves simultaneously. That's quite a claim, Dr. Sharma. The human vocal apparatus is complex, but it operates on a singular principle of vocal cord vibration, modulated by the resonant cavities. You're suggesting something beyond that. I'm suggesting what the data shows, Mia said, trying to keep her tone even. It's a consistent, measurable acoustic phenomenon present in his voice that is not present in others. I believe it contributes to the unique feel of his singing, perhaps even to its emotional impact. Jenkins sighed. Emotional impact is subjective. Sharma, we need quantifiable, refractable results. But it's flicker, as you call it. Wistfully, they were dismissing it as an anomaly, something to be explained away rather than a discovery to be investigated. I'd like to pursue this further, Professor Mia pressed. I believe there's a unique physiological explanation for this. I need more advanced tools, perhaps a bio-acoustic modeling software that can simulate human vocal physiology in greater detail. Jenkins stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Sharma, you can spend another week on it, but if you can't find a concrete, explainable mechanism, we have other projects needing recoursibilities. She had to find someone who would listen, someone with an open mind, who could look past the conventional and see the extraordinary. She knew just the person. If she could only get him to pay attention. Mia walked out of Professor Jenkins' office feeling deflated. Unclassifiable Beckett. The phrase echoed in her mind, a death knell for her budding discovery. She knew deep in her gut that this wasn't in Beckett. This was real. But how to prove it to the skeptical minds of the Institute? She slumped into her chair, staring at the glowing spectrographs on her screen. The flicker still danced there, stubbornly persistent, demanding to be understood. She needed a fresh perspective, someone who wasn't bound by the Institute's rigid protocols and cautious approach to anything that smelled too much like breakthrough. An idea sparked Dr. Elias Thorne. He was a legend in the field of acoustics, a pioneer in bioacoustic modeling, but he'd retired years ago after a disagreement with the Institute's board over the direction of research funding. He was known for his eccentricities, his brilliant, unconventional thinking, and his almost mystical understanding of sound. Getting him to look at her data would be a long shot, but he was her last hope. She found his contact information buried in an old faculty directory, a residential address, and a very old-fashioned landline number. Taking a deep breath, Mia dialed. It rang several times before a gruff, elderly voice answered. Thorne residence, the voice said, sounding like he'd just woken up from a nap. Dr. Thorne? Mia asked, trying to sound professional, but her voice wavered slightly with nerves. My name is Amelia Sharma. I'm a new researcher at the Institute of Advanced Sound Studies. I hope I'm not disturbing you. There was a long pause. The Institute, you say. What do they want now? Did Jenkins finally realize I was right about the quantum resonance of whale songs? Mia smiled, despite herself. No, Dr. Thorne, nothing like that. I actually have a unique acoustic phenomenon I discovered in some historical recordings, and I was hoping you might be willing to lend your expertise. I've hit a wall with my colleagues. Young people always hit walls. It's how you learn to climb. What's this unique phenomenon? It's about Elvis Presley's voice, Mia blurted out. I've detected a consistent low-frequency signature. It doesn't fit standard human vocal models. It's almost like a secondary, resonant wave. Silence. Mia held her breath. Thorne's voice was suddenly sharper, more intrigued. Not the kind of historical recording I typically get requests about. Tell me more, young lady. Over the phone is fine for now. Mia launched into a concise explanation of her findings, describing the flicker, its consistent nature, and how it defied conventional acoustic explanations. She could almost feel Thorne's mind whirring on the other end of the line. A secondary resonant wave? You say, not a harmonic, not an overtone, not just a byproduct of diaphragm strength? No, sir, not in the typical sense. It's too distinct, too stable, and present across too many different recordings. It's almost as if his voice has a built-in bass line that no one can quite hear consciously, but feels. Feels, you say? Thorne scoffed, but Mia sensed interest. Not dismissal. A scientist. Feeling things, that's a dangerous path. Dr. Sharma, but it's precisely that feeling that I think is linked to its power. Dr. Thorne, Mia pressed. The raw data shows a quantifiable presence, but I believe its effect is what makes it so significant. Another long silence. All right, Dr. Sharma, bring your data. My home laboratory isn't as grand as the Institute's, but it's more forgiving come tomorrow morning. And bring the king. I haven't listened to him properly in decades. Mail that out to Thorne. I'll be there. The next morning, Mia arrived at Dr. Thorne's house, a charming, slightly overgrown cottage, overflowing with books, instruments, and wires. Alias Thorne himself was a man who looked like he'd been crafted by time and deep thought. Wispy white hair, kind but piercing eyes, and a perpetually thoughtful expression. He led her to a cluttered yet organized room filled with vintage audio equipment, modern computers and strange custom-built devices. It smelled faintly of solder and old paper. So the king, Thorne said, gesturing to Mia's laptop. Mia set up her laptop, connecting it to Thorne's high-end audio interface and speakers. She played the segment of Heartbreak Hotel. Thorne closed his eyes, listening intently, his head tilting slightly. He looked less like a scientist and more like a conductor. Feeling every nuance, when the snippet ended, he opened his eyes. Play it again, he commanded. Mia did, again and again. Compended. Finally, he said, his voice quiet, almost irreverent. I hear it, or rather, I feel it, that subtle, almost subsonic hum. It's like his voice is wrapped in velvet, a layer that most ears perceive as warmth or depth, but which your machine correctly isolates as a distinct frequency. Mia felt a surge of relief. See it? I can almost taste it, Thorne corrected, a twinkle in his eye. This isn't a Beck dart. Dr. Sharma, this is an acoustic fingerprint, unlike anything I've ever encountered. You're onto something truly remarkable. Let's dig deeper, young lady. Much, much deeper. Mia smiled. A genuine, relieved smile. She had found her champion. The wall she'd hit at the Institute had just been scaled with the help of a wise old master who could truly hear the echoes of the king. With Dr. Elias Thorne by her side, Mia felt a renewed sense of purpose. His home lab, while unconventional, was a treasure trove of specialized equipment, and Thorne's own ingenious inventions. He had custom-built spectral analyzers, bio-acoustic simulators, and even a unique sound chamber designed to eliminate all external interference. We need to go beyond the microphone, Thorne explained on their first full day of collaboration. Recordings are just echoes. We need to understand the source. How did his body create this? Their initial focus was on refining the data. They filtered out every conceivable external noise, meticulously cleaned the audio files to an almost pristine state, and then ran Mia's flicker through Thorne's array of diagnostic tools. The results were consistent. The low-frequency resonance was undeniably part of Elvis's vocal output. This frequency, this 60 to 80 Hz range. Thorne mused, staring at a complex waveform. It's a curious beast. It's often associated with, call me date, it's what made me think of a physiological anomaly. Perhaps his vocal cords were structured differently, or his diaphragm had unusual strength, or even his chest cavity was somehow uniquely resonant. Thorne smiled. Precisely. But how to test that without the subject present? He gestured to a large, intimidating machine in the corner of his lab. "We used bio-acoustic modeling. Sharma. My magnum opus. It's a highly advanced vocal simulator that can be programmed with various physiological parameters. We can input hypothetic vocal cord shapes, laryngeal structures, diaphragm power, and see if we can rechucky this flicker." Days turned into weeks. Mia and Thorne worked tirelessly. Fueled by strong coffee and an unyielding curiosity, they fed the simulator every conceivable variation of human vocal anatomy. They adjusted the elasticity of hypothetical vocal cords, the volume of simulated lung capacity, the shape of the pharynx and oral cavity. They even explored theories of subharmonic vocalization, a rare technique seen in some Mongolian throat singers. But Elvis's flicker was different. It was a companion frequency, not a primary one. Then a breakthrough. Thorne was inputting a series of parameters related to diaphragm strength and a subtly altered laryngeal structure, specifically a slightly wider opening of the glottis. During certain vocalizations, paired with an unusually powerful and controlled diaphragm, "Run it," Thorne commanded, his eyes gleaming. Mia pressed the button. The simulator hummed and a synthesized voice filled the lab. It wasn't Elvis, of course, but as the simulated voice hit a low, resonant note, a faint, undeniable flicker appeared on the spectral analysis screen. Not as perfect as Elvis's, but strikingly similar. "Bingo!" Thorne whispered, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "It's a combination, a unique interplay between the diaphragm, the laryngeal muscles, and the resonant cavities of the chest. It's like his entire upper body was a perfectly tuned instrument, capable of parallel, sympathetic resonance." Mia stared at the screen, her heart pounding. So, he wasn't just singing powerfully. His body was inherently designed to create this extra layer of sound. "Precisely," Thorne confirmed. "It's a harmonic overtone, yes, but one that's so robust and consistently present that it acts like a separate underlying note. It's almost as if he had a built-in bass speaker in his chest. This wasn't magic, this was biology, pushed to an extreme level of perfection." Elvis Presley's voice wasn't just a product of practice and talent. It was a product of a unique physiological gift. And this is why it has such an effect on people, Mia realized, connecting the dots, this underlying resonance. It's not consciously heard, but it's felt. It adds a depth, a richness, a subtle vibration that impacts the listener on a subcation. Indeed, the human body is a remarkable resonator, and some frequencies, even those just at the edge of conscious perception, can have profound effects. We're on the cusp of understand. Not just analyzing sound, we're analyzing human connection, wired into the very fabric of his vocal cord output. The king's voice, Mia, was truly a marvel of action. The discovery of Elvis's unique physiological vocal mechanism, the powerful diaphragm, the subtly altered laryngeal structure, and the resulting deep, consistent harmonic overtone was exhilarating. But Mia and Thorne knew the how. Why did this specific frequency range, this flicker, radiate so profoundly with listeners? "It's about sympathetic resonance," Thorne explained, sketching diagrams on a whiteboard. "When two objects share a natural resonant frequency, one can cause the other to vibrate without direct contact. Think of a tuning fork making another one hum from across the room. Your vocal cords do this with the air in your throat. But what if Elvis's voice also triggered a sympathetic resonance within the listener? You mean it physically affected them, not just emotionally?" "Precisely," Thorne confirmed. "It's often found in natural environments like waterfalls or deep caves, and in spiritual chants or very deep musical notes." They hypothesized that Elvis's unique vocal resonance subtly stimulated the inner ear and possibly even the vagus nerve, which plays a critical role in regulating internal organ functions, heart rate, and emotional responses. This stimulation wouldn't be consciously perceived as a sound, but as a feeling, a deep sense of calm, excitement, or profound connection. It explains so much, Mia murmured, pacing the lab, why people felt such an intense emotional bond with him. It wasn't just the lyrics or his stage presence. His voice itself was physically resonating with something deep inside them. To test their hypothesis, they needed more than just audio analysis. They needed to measure human responses. This, they knew, would be the hardest part. The Institute would never fund such a fringe study, especially involving brain activity and subjective emotional responses. "We'll do it ourselves," Thorne declared, ever the maverick. "I know a few old colleagues, neuroscientists, who appreciate the interplay of sound. And the brain, they owe me a few favors. They recruited a small, diverse group of volunteers. Each volunteer was hooked up to an EEG machine which measured brain activity and biofeedback sensors that tracked heart rate, skin conductance, and muscle tension. They were then played various vocal recordings. Control samples from, of course, Elvis Presley's songs, particularly those rich in the flicker. Frequencies, the results were astonishing. When listening to Elvis, a consistent pattern emerged. There was a noticeable increase in activity in the brain's limbic system, particularly the amygdala, involved in emotion processing, and the hippocampus, involved in memory and emotional regulation. More importantly, there was a measurable calming effect on the parasympathetic nervous system, leading to lower heart rates and reduced stress responses, even during upbeat songs. It was as if his voice, through its unique resonant qualities, was simultaneously exciting and soothing. "Look at this," Mia exclaimed, pointing to a brain scan. "The neural pathways light up in patterns that suggest both arousal and comfort. It's paradoxical, but it fits the king of rock and roll persona perfectly." He ignited passion, but also brought a strange sense of familiarity and ease. They had found the superhuman aspect. It wasn't magic, but an extreme biological optimization. Elvis Presley's vocal cords, coupled with his unique physiology, produced a sound that subtly, subconsciously altered the listener's brain and body, creating a profound, empathetic, and uniquely powerful, emotional. "This is not just about music," Mia said, her voice filled with awe. "This is about the power of human connection, the subtle ways we resonate with each other, physically and emotionally." Elvis wasn't just a singer, he was a master of sympathetic resonance, perhaps the greatest the world has ever known. "Indeed, Mia. The king wasn't just an entertainer, he was a biological phenomenon, and now we have the science to prove it. The world needs to know." The prospect of presenting their findings to the Institute, particularly to Professor Jenkins, filled Mia with a mix of dread and exhilaration. They had gathered undeniable data, spectrographs, bioacoustic simulations, and crucially neurological responses from their volunteer study. This wasn't just a flicker anymore. It was a phenomenon with measurable effects. Thorne, with his seasoned wisdom, advised, "Mia, Jenkins will look for holes. Mia, he'll demand rigor. We have to be impeccable. No grandstanding, just facts presented clearly and unequivocally." They spent days preparing their presentation, refining every slide, rehearsing every explanation. They simulated potential challenges, from questions about statistical significance to the validity of their brain imaging techniques. Thorne even dug out some of his old, obscure acoustic theories to show how this phenomenon, while rare, wasn't entirely outside the realm of possibility. The day of the presentation arrived. The main conference room at the Institute was filled, not just with Jenkins and Chen, but with several other senior researchers. Word having spread of Thorne's involvement in the unusual nature of the research, Mia took a deep breath, clutching her pointer. "Professor Jenkins, Dr. Chen, esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice steady My initial analysis of Elvis Presley's vocal recordings revealed a consistent low-frequency acoustic signature, which we've termed sympathetic resonance. Today, Dr. Thorne and I will present the evidence that this signature is not in backup, but a universal physiological effects on listeners. She started with the acoustic data, showing the spectrographs, the bio-acoustic simulations that propagate the flicker based on specific physiological parameters. She explained Thorne's theory of a uniquely powerful diaphragm and laryngeal structure. Jenkins listened impassively, but Mia could see a flicker of curiosity in Chen's eyes. And now, Thorne stepped forward, his voice resonating with authority. We move beyond the sound itself to its impact on the human brain. He then presented the results of their volunteer study, showing the EEG readouts, the brain scans, and the biofeedback data. As you can see, Thorne explained, pointing to a glowing image of a brain. When exposed to Elvis Presley's voice, particularly passages, riches, persistent, and sympathetic resonant, our subjugation avided distant. Mia took over. Furthermore, we observed a measurable shift towards parasympathetic nervous system dominance, indicating a state of both heightened emotional engagement. This was about his voice, literally affecting people's brains and bodies on a fundamental level. Professor Jenkins finally spoke, his voice unusually quiet. Dr. Sharma, Dr. Thorne, these are extraordinary claims. You're suggesting Elvis Presley possessed a vocal ability that literally altered the neurological state. We do, Professor, Mia replied, looking him squarely in the eye. And the data supports it. This isn't a theory. It's a measurable, replicable phenomenon. His unique vocal physiology allowed him to produce sound that resonated with the innate biological systems of his listeners, creating a profound, almost primal connections. Chen, who had been skeptical from the start, leaned forward. Have you controlled for the celebrity factor, the subjects knowing it was Elvis? Could that be influencing their brain activity? Excellent question, Dr. Chen, Thorne interjected. We ran blind tests. Subjects were exposed to masked vocal samples, some Elvis, some other artists, some synthetically generated tones. Without knowing the sources, the neural patterns were consistent. Regardless, Jenkins rose from his seat, walking slowly to the screen, staring at the vibrant brain scans. He stood there for a long moment, then turned back to Mia and Thorne. His face was unreadable. This changes things, Jenkins finally said, his voice tinged with awe rather than skepticism. This changes everything we thought we knew about vocal performance. Dr. Sharma, Dr. Thorne, this is a grounding discovery. The Institute will dedicate full resources to identity. Professor Jenkins, the pragmatic, data-driven scientist, had been swayed by the undeniable truth. King's voice through the lens of science had just cemented its place, not just in music history, but in the annals of human biological marvels. The truth had been unveiled, and the world was about to listen. The moment the Institute's official press release hit the wires, the world exploded. Scientists discover superhuman vocal qualities in Elvis Presley's voice, screened headlines across the globe. News channels played snippets of Elvis's songs alongside animated graphics of brain activity. Overnight, Mia Sharma and Elias Thorne became unlikely scientific celebrities. The reaction was a whirlwind of emotions. Elvis fans were ecstatic. We always knew he had something special, they declared on social media. Now, science proves it. Online forums buzzed with discussions, revisiting old concert footage, with new eyes, listening to familiar songs with fresh ears, trying to feel the sympathetic resonance. Fan groups organized listening parties, convinced they could now perceive the subtle physiological effects. The scientific community was divided. Some hailed it as a monumental breakthrough in bioacoustics and nano. Others, particularly those initially dismissive of Mia's work, remained skeptical, demanding more peer-reviewed studies larger sample sizes, and independent replication. Professor Jenkins, now fully on board, staunchly defended the research, basking in the unexpected limelight his department received. The media, always hungry for a sensational story, camped outside the institute. Mia and Thorne were inundated with interview requests. Maya, naturally reserved, found herself awkwardly but earnestly explaining complex scientifics in simple language for television cameras. Thorne, enjoying his return to the spotlight, held court with reporters, regaling them with anecdotes and profound insights into the mysteries of sound. "It's not about magic," Mia patiently explained on a popular morning show. "No, you couldn't retouch it by simply singing louder. It was a unique, natural phenomenon." The superhuman aspect wasn't about extraordinary feats, but about an extraordinary depth of human capacity. Amidst the chaos, Mia found moments of quiet reflection. She would put on Elvis's music in her lab, not for analysis, but just to listen. Now, knowing what she knew, she felt a different connection. It wasn't just music. It was a testament to the profound potential of human expression, a biological marvel woven into the fabric of sound. She received emails from people around the world, sharing their personal stories of how Elvis's music had touched their lives, often in ways they couldn't explain. A woman wrote about how his voice calmed her during panic attacks. A veteran shared how Elvis's songs brought him comfort during lonely nights in service. Maya realized that her scientific discovery was validating countless personal experiences, giving scientific credence to the inexplicable power of art. Jenkins, once the skeptic, was now their biggest advocate, ensuring Mia and Thorne received all the resources they needed. The institute, once cautious, was now eager to become a hub for bioacoustic research. They planned a major international conference to present their full findings and invite other researchers to collaborate. The most heartwarming reactions came from the families of Elvis's closest associate. Priscilla Presley issued a statement expressing her profound appreciation for the scientific validation of what she and so many others had always felt about Elvis's voice. His musicians, his friends, his stage crew all spoke of his unique power, now understood through a scientific lens. Mia learned a valuable lesson. Science wasn't just about cold data and objective facts. It was also about understanding the human experience, about giving language to the inexplicable, and about revealing the hidden wonders of the world, even in the most familiar of places. King's voice, once just a subject of study, had become a bridge between science and soul, between the quantifiable and the truly human. The world had reacted, and for Mia it was just the beginning of a profound journey. The worldwide sensation around the Elvis voice discovery didn't fade. Instead, it deepened. The initial media frenzy evolved into more thoughtful discussions, sparking new interest, not just in Elvis Presley, but in the broader fields of bioacoustics, neuroaesthetics, and the science of human emotion. The Institute of Advanced Sound Studies, thanks to Mia and Thorne's work, became a global focal point for this nascent field. Conferences were organized, research grants poured in, and young scientists, inspired by the groundbreaking discovery, flocked to the Institute, eager to study the nexus of sound physiology and emotion. For Elvis Presley's legacy, the discovery was nothing short of a rebirth. He was no longer just a cultural icon of a bygone era, remembered for his charisma and controversial moves. Now, he was viewed through a new scientific lens, a biological marvel, a testament to the hidden potentials of the human voice. His music wasn't just entertainment. It was a phenomenon, a physiological experience. Documentaries were re-edited, featuring Mia and Thorne explaining the sympathetic resonance. Music critics revisited his discography, analyzing how the flicker might have influenced the emotional timbre of different songs. Historians pondered how this unique vocal gift contributed to his unparalleled connection with audiences transcending race, class, and cultural divides. Maya, now a celebrated lead researcher, found herself giving lectures at universities, and even at Graceland, where she met Priscilla Presley in person. Priscilla, elegant and gracious, listened intently as Mia explained the science behind the voice she had loved. "He always had that effect," Priscilla said softly, tears welling in her eyes. "He moved people without even trying. Now I know why." Meeting her, Mia felt a deep sense of validation, a confirmation that her scientific pursuit had touched something profoundly human. Thorne, delighted by his resurgence, reveled in the intellectual debates and the renewed vigor of the scientific community. He became a beloved figure, dispensing wisdom and quirky insights, pushing for more interdisciplinary research. "We've only scratched the surface," he'd often say. If Elvis's voice could do this, what other hidden powers lie within human expression? What can we learn about empathy, about connection, about our very biology through the study of sound? Mia and Thorne began to explore new questions. Could other legendary performers have similar, albeit different, physiological advantages? What about opera singers or ancient chanters? They started a new project, digitizing and analyzing thousands of hours of historical vocal recordings from diverse cultures and eras, looking for other unique acoustic signatures and their potential physiological encos. The focus shifted from merely identifying anomalies to understanding the mechanisms of human connection through sound. If a certain frequency could evoke comfort, could others evoke courage or focus, or even healing? The possibilities seemed endless. The superhuman label, while catchy for the media, was slowly being replaced by a more nuanced understanding. Elvis's voice was a peak example of human potential, a natural evolutionary advantage that allowed for an unparalleled emotional bond. It wasn't about being more than human, but about being exceptionally human, revealing the profound depths of our own biology. For Mia, the journey had transformed her from a quiet, data-driven scientist into someone with a deeper appreciation for the interplay between art, science, and the human spirit. She still loved the precision of data, but now she also understood the immeasurable power of a voice, a song, a single resonant frequency to move mountains within the human heart. The echoes of the king, once just old recordings, now resonated with a renewed vibrancy, illuminating a new path for human legacy. Years passed, and Mia Sharma's reputation as a trailblazer in bioacoustics grew exponentially. The Elvis Effect study, as it was now widely known, had cemented her place as a leading figure, proving that sound could be both an art form and a profound scientific tool. The Institute thrived, attracting top talent and securing unprecedented funding for interdisciplinary research. Maya, now heading her own department, Neuroacoustic Resonance, continued to work closely with Elias Thorne, who, despite his age, remained as sharp and enthusiastic. They were scoring the therapeutic potential of sound. If certain frequencies can induce relaxation or heighten empathy, Mia often mused to Thorne, can we harness that for well-being? Can we create sonic prescriptions for anxiety? Or even help people struggling with social connection? They developed soundscapes that, based on their understanding of sympathetic resonance, helped calm children with sensory processing disorders. They collaborated with psychologists to create audio programs that aided in stress reduction and improved focus for students. It wasn't about curing diseases, but about enhancing human experience and well-being through scientifically designed sound. One of their most promising avenues was in vocal therapy. By analyzing the vocal patterns of individuals and understanding their unique resonant frequencies, they could help people optimize their own voices for clearer communication, stronger presence, and even improved emotional regulation. It was about empowering individuals to find their own sympathetic resonance. Every voice has its own power, Mia Thorne often reminded her. Elvis was an extreme example, a statistical outlier, but the principles of resonance and human connection apply to us all. His gift simply laid bare what is latent within every human being. Mia also made sure to keep Elvis's legacy at the forefront of their work. They developed educational programs for schools, explaining the science behind his voice in an accessible way, inspiring a new generation to appreciate both music, and science. She often brought in examples of his music, allowing students to experience the flicker through high fidelity. Speakers seeing their reactions of awe and wonder. Her personal life had also found a new harmony. She was still fiercely dedicated to her work, but she had learned to balance it with a richer personal life, something she'd neglected in her early driven years. She volunteered at a community music program teaching kids about sound, not just as a science, but as a source of joy and expression. Professor Jenkins, having seen the profound impact of Mia's work, had become her staunch supporter, often proudly introducing her as Dr. Sharma, who showed us that even the king's voice held scientific secret. He had even developed a fondness for Elvis's music, often humming hound dogs softly in the hallways. The superhuman aspect of Elvis's voice was no longer viewed as a freak show anomaly, but as a guiding light. It wasn't about cloning his voice or creating artificial super singers. It was about understanding the extraordinary capacity of the human body and spirit, and using that knowledge to benefit humanity. Mia stood in her now bustling lab, watching her team of young researchers analyze complex audio patterns, their faces alight with curiosity. The hum of the machines was no longer just background noise. It was the symphony of progress, of discovery. She thought of that first day, sitting alone in her cubicle, tasked with analyzing a cultural acoustic signature. She'd been skeptical, uninspired. Then, Elvis's voice had filled her headphones and the flicker had appeared, leading her down a path she could never have imagined. It had been a journey of scientific revelation, personal growth, and a profound appreciation for the invisible threads that connect us all through the universal language of sound. The harmony she sought in the data she had also found in her life, a beautiful resonance echoing from the voice of a king. Years turned into a decade. Dr. Amelia Sharma, now a revered figure in her field, stood on a podium at the International Bio-acoustic Summit, delivering the keynote address. Her hair, once a vibrant dark brown, now held streaks of silver earned through countless late nights in the lab. Her voice, clear and confident, commanded the attention of thousands of scientists, musicians, and enthusiasts from around the world. When we first stumbled upon the unique acoustic signature in Elvis Presley's voice, she began a familiar spectrograph of the flicker glowing behind her. Many dismissed it as anomaly, but science at its heart, in daring to explore answers that lie beyond our current understanding. She spoke not just of the scientific details, the physiological mechanism, the neural activation, the sympathetic resonance, but of the profound implications. Elvis Presley's voice, she explained, was a masterpiece of natural bioengineering. It didn't just entertain, it connected, it bypassed conscious thought and resonated with the very core of our being, our limbic system, our primal need for empathy. The superhuman label, she acknowledged, had caught the public's imagination, but its true meaning, she insisted, was far more profound. It wasn't about being more than human, but about revealing the extraordinary potential that lies within human experience. Elvis's voice served as a beacon, guiding us to a deeper understanding of relationships and even our physiological well-being. She spoke of the advancements her team, still including a vibrant Elias Thorne as a cherished advisor, had made in therapeutic acoustics, in understanding communication, and in helping individuals harness the power of their own voices. The Elvis study had opened doors to a whole new field, demonstrating how art and science could illuminate each other in unexpected ways. After her address, a long line of admirers formed. Among them was a young woman, a new HD student. Her eyes bright with inspiration. "Dr. Sharma," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Your work on Elvis changed my life. I grew up loving his music, and then I read your papers, and it just clicked." Later, back in her hotel room, Mia put on one of her favorite Elvis tracks, "Can't Help Falling in Love." She closed her eyes, letting the familiar melody wash over her. She could still feel the sympathetic resonance, that subtle underlying hum, now so familiar. It wasn't just data anymore. It was part of her, part of the legacy she had helped uncover. She thought back to that first day. The hum of the servers, the daunting task, the skepticism of Jenkins. She remembered Thorne's wise, unconventional ear. It had been a journey of curiosity, perseverance, and unexpected wonder. The superhuman voice of Elvis Presley wasn't just a scientific curiosity. It was a testament to the profound, often hidden capacities of human expression. It showed that art could possess a biological power, a vibrational language that transcended words and touched the very essence of human connection. Maya knew her work would continue pushing the boundaries of what was known about sound and its impact, but at that moment, listening to the king's voice, she felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. The resonance of his voice, she realized, wouldn't just linger in old recordings or scientific papers. It would echo through generations, a constant reminder of the extraordinary magic hidden within the human voice, waiting to be discovered, understood, and cherished. And for Amelia Sharma, that was the most heartwarming discovery of all.